The bell above the door jingled as the man stepped into Garrison's Steakhouse, shaking off the cool night air. It was the kind of place that reeked of old money and quiet exclusivity, dim lighting, dark mahogany booths, the soft clinking of wine glasses from well-dressed patrons who spoke in low, measured tones. A grand chandelier hung above the center of the room, casting a golden glow over the restaurant's finest tables. Darren Cole took in the scene with a practiced glance. He wasn't a stranger to luxury. In fact, he thrived in it. But the moment he crossed the threshold, he felt something else settle over the room, an almost imperceptible shift in energy. A pause. A tension thick enough to cut with the steak knives set neatly on every white-clothed table. Behind the host's stand, Walter Garrison watched him. The man was in his late 60s, with slicked-back silver hair and a white dress shirt tucked into slacks that strained at the waist. He gripped the podium with both hands, fingers tightening slightly. Darren had seen that look before. A flash of calculation, of judgment. The quick decision, spoken in neither words nor gestures, that this was a man who didn't belong here. Walter didn't smile, didn't offer the same polite greeting he gave the last guest. He simply cleared his throat and spoke in a flat, unimpressed tone. "Can I help you?" Darren met his gaze, unbothered. "Table for one." Walter didn't glance at the reservation book. Didn't even pretend to check. "Sorry," he said almost lazily. "We're full tonight." Darren arched an eyebrow. "That's so." His gaze flicked across the dining area. Several tables sat empty, perfectly set, untouched. The restaurant wasn't full, not even close. Walter must have noticed him looking because he reached for a reserved sign and placed it on a nearby table with deliberate finality. Like I said, Walter repeated, his eyes locking onto Darren's. "We're full." A quiet moment passed. A slow beat. Then the door behind Darren chimed again. An older white couple stepped inside, an elegant gentleman in a tailored suit, his wife wrapped in a luxurious mink coat. Before they could even speak, Walter's expression transformed. "Mr. Reynolds." "Right this way, sir." His voice practically dripped with warmth as he grabbed two menus and gestured toward one of the many not reserved tables. Darren watched the exchange with an almost amused detachment. Not surprised, not offended, just interested. He had a choice now. He could challenge it, make a scene, demand service. But that wasn't his style. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. With a few taps, he placed a call. A second later, Walter's own phone rang. The old man frowned, confused. He reached into his apron pocket, pulled it out, and answered. "Yeah? Who is this?" Darren slipped his phone back into his pocket, then smiled. "This is Darren Cole, CEO of United National Bank, the institution that processes every single one of your business transactions." Walter's face drained of color. Darren watched the realization settle in. The slow, sinking horror in the old man's eyes. And that was just the beginning. Walter Garrison stood frozen, the phone pressed to his ear, but he wasn't really hearing anything anymore. His mind had stalled, stuttering like an old engine on a winter morning. Darren Cole, CEO of United National Bank. The very same bank that handled Garrison Steakhouse's transactions. The same bank that processed every card swipe, every wire transfer, every business loan renewal that kept Walter's restaurant running. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Darren watched the color drain from Walter's face, waiting for the weight of the moment to settle in. "Mr. Garrison," he said, his voice as smooth as ever. "You still there?" Walter's mouth opened, but no words came out. He swallowed, forcing something, anything, out of his throat. I didn't." Darren let out a soft chuckle. "Didn't what?" He gestured around the restaurant. "Didn't realize I'd recognize an empty table? Didn't expect me to call you." His voice dropped just slightly, the amusement in his tone sharpening into something far less forgiving. "Or maybe," Darren continued, taking a slow step closer, "you just didn't think someone like me could be someone like this." Walter's grip tightened on the phone. The other diners weren't paying attention yet, but the waitstaff had noticed. A few servers lingered near the kitchen entrance, pretending to check their notepads while sneaking glances at their boss. Darren let the silence stretch, let Walter squirm for just a moment longer before he took a step back and exhaled, as if shaking off the tension. "Tell you what," Darren said, adjusting the cuff of his navy blue suit. "I'm a reasonable man. Maybe this was all just a big misunderstanding. Maybe you are full, and I just happened to walk in at the worst time. Walter latched onto that, nodding quickly. Right. Yeah, exactly. Just bad timing is all. Darren smiled. So if I were to check right now, I'm sure I wouldn't find your restaurant listed on OpenTable with available reservations for tonight. Walter flinched. Darren pulled out his phone again, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward Walter. There, in bold letters. Garrison Steakhouse. Reservations available tonight. Walter's jaw clenched so tight Darren thought his teeth might crack. You know what I find interesting? Darren said, tapping the phone against his palm. I could pull up any number of reviews from customers who've had the same experience I just had. People turned away for reservations that didn't exist. And I gotta wonder, what do they all have in common? Walter's lips pressed into a thin line. Darren tilted his head. Come on, Walt. Say it. The old man shook his head, his nostrils flaring. That's not. I don't. You don't what? Darren asked, his voice dropping lower. You don't serve people like me. You don't want us in your nice little steakhouse. Asterisk. Walter's face was a mess of emotions. Panic, anger, something that looked like desperation but was too stubborn to come out as an apology. Darren sighed and slipped his phone back into his pocket. Here's the thing, Walter, he said, his tone turning almost conversational. I can make a call right now. Have your merchant account frozen by morning. No card transactions, no online bookings, nothing. He snapped his fingers. Just like that. Walter's breath hitched. Or, Darren continued, I could dig a little deeper. Maybe pull your loan history. Check if you've been keeping up with payments. See if there's anything in the fine print that might give my bank a reason to call on the balance. Walter's hands twitched at his sides. Darren chuckled. Or hey, maybe I just take a seat at the bar, order a nice steak, and we pretend none of this ever happened. He met Walter's gaze, his smile never faltering. Your choice. Walter didn't move for a long time. His fingers tapped anxiously against the wooden counter. His pride was a beast wrestling inside him, roaring for him to refuse, to stand his ground. But his wallet was the one that made the decision. Walter cleared his throat, forced a tight smile, and grabbed a menu. Right this way, sir. Darren's smile widened. Walter led Darren through the restaurant with an exaggerated politeness, as though every step had become an awkward dance. The air between them thickened with every passing moment, and the usual elegance of Garrison Steakhouse felt off. The clinking of silverware, the murmured conversations of the guests, all of it faded into a dull hum that only seemed to highlight Walter's discomfort. Darren's steps were measured, deliberate, as though he were walking through an exhibit, a place that had once been a symbol of high-class hospitality, but had now lost all its luster in his eyes. They reached a table near the back, far from the center of the dining room. Walter pulled out a chair, offering it to Darren with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Darren didn't sit immediately. Instead, he paused, surveying the space. His gaze traveled over the empty chairs, the vacant booths, and the reserved signs that had been placed to make sure no one else would take a seat. After a moment, Darren turned to Walter. This is your best table. Walter swallowed. It's just, we keep it for special guests. Darren's eyebrow arched, amusement flickering in his eyes. Special guests. Like the Reynolds, I assume. Walter's jaw clenched. Mr. Reynolds is a regular. Darren nodded slowly. I see. Regulars are treated well here, I assume. He sat down finally, without waiting for Walter's approval. So tell me, Walter, how long have you been in business? Walter shifted uncomfortably, clearly eager to change the subject. 40 years. 42, actually. Built this place from the ground up. It's my pride and joy. Darren leaned back in his chair, fingers lightly tapping the table. That's impressive. Really. I'm sure you've had to make some tough decisions along the way. Hard calls to keep this place running. Walter didn't answer right away, his gaze flickering nervously. I bet, Darren continued, you've seen a lot of people come and go in this town. Some rise, some fall. Maybe even some that try to come in here who didn't quite fit the profile. Walter's throat tightened, his lips curling into a forced smile. He stepped back, as though trying to create some distance. I don't know what you're getting at, Mr. Cole. Darren's expression darkened. You know exactly what I'm getting at. Don't think for a second I don't see the way you treat people who don't fit your idea of class. Walter's eyes darted away, his fingers twitching. He knew this conversation wasn't about to go in a direction he could control. Darren's voice dropped, low and cold. You've been running this place for decades, Walter. You've built it into something people come to expect, an image of sophistication, exclusivity. But underneath it all, it's built on something uglier, isn't it? Walter's pulse quickened. What are you talking about? Darren leaned forward, locking eyes with him. You turned me away because of the color of my skin. You thought I wouldn't be able to afford a meal here. Or worse, you thought I didn't belong. And that's where you're wrong. The words hung in the air like a weight, and for a long moment, Walter said nothing. He couldn't. Darren's gaze never wavered. You know what else I'm going to do, Walter? I'm going to ensure that every one of your employees knows exactly what kind of man you are. No one in your kitchen, your wait staff, your front of house, no one will ever again work in a place that tolerates this kind of treatment. Walter's breath hitched, and for the first time, real regret flashed across his face. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The weight of his actions, of the years he'd spent curating an image of elitism and exclusion, was finally crashing down on him. People like me, Walter, Darren said quietly, we have options. We have the power to walk away. But you built your restaurant on the backs of everyone who worked for you, regardless of their background, their race, or their story. And now the truth is out. Walter took a shaky step back, then another, as though Darren's words had physically pushed him away. I didn't mean. His voice trailed off, his face pale. Darren stood slowly, straightening his suit jacket. He glanced around the restaurant, as if seeing it for the first time. I'll be back later to check on your progress, Walter. He turned to leave, but just before stepping out the door, he paused and called over his shoulder. One last thing. Walter didn't respond, but his eyes were fixed on Darren, waiting. Make no mistake, Walter, Darren said, voice cutting through the air. This is your last chance. Change your ways, or you'll lose everything. And I mean everything. He didn't wait for an answer. With one last look at the disarrayed restaurant, Darren stepped out of the door, the bell ringing behind him as he left Walter to face the consequences of his own actions. Walter Garrison barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of Darren Cole's calm, unshakable face haunted him. The CEO's words echoed in his mind, repeating like a warning bell, change your ways or you'll lose everything. Walter had spent decades building Garrison Steakhouse, turning it into a symbol of exclusivity and wealth. To have it all threatened by a single man, one he tried so hard to ignore, was almost more than he could bear. He spent hours pacing in his office, the once comfortable space now suffocating with the weight of his decisions. The late-night rush of staff was far behind him. The phones had long stopped ringing with reservations. The restaurant felt empty, like a ghost of what it once was. At the crack of dawn, Walter knew he couldn't keep running from it. He needed to do something. He needed to fix this. But the problem wasn't just Darren Cole. It was the people who knew, who worked for him. The employees. By mid-morning, Walter had already started making calls. A meeting was set with his entire staff. Every server, every line cook, every front-of-house worker. They would all need to hear from him. The staff trickled in, some looking nervous, others curious, as they gathered in the back room. Walter paced back and forth, wringing his hands. He could feel his heart racing, his palms slick with sweat. It had never been like this. Never. Finally, everyone was assembled. The room fell silent as Walter cleared his throat, glancing nervously at his staff. I know you're all wondering why I called this meeting, he began, his voice shaky, but steady enough to be heard. I've made some mistakes, and I need to address them head-on. There were no gasps, no murmurs of shock, just a room full of blank faces, unsure where this was heading. Walter continued, swallowing the lump in his throat. I've been running this place for over 40 years, but I've let something dark grow here. It's not the food, and it's not the service. It's the way I've let this place become a symbol of exclusion. He saw a few glances exchanged among his employees, some faces hardening, others softening. I've turned people away because they didn't fit what I thought was right. I've judged people based on things I shouldn't have. And for that, I am truly sorry. A quiet murmur ran through the room. Walter's eyes flickered to the faces in front of him. Some were skeptical, others intrigued, but none of them seemed to be buying it just yet. He took a deep breath. What happened last night with Mr. Cole was a wake-up call. It forced me to see just how far I've let myself, and this restaurant, become something it was never supposed to be. We've always been about quality, about food, about class, but I lost sight of what that really meant. A young waiter in the back raised his hand, his voice hesitant but clear. "What are you saying, Mr. Garrison? Are you going to change things around here?" Walter looked at the young man and nodded. "Yes, I want to make changes. I've already reached out to some organizations that are dedicated to diversity and inclusion. I'm going to make sure we have a more open, welcoming atmosphere here." The room was quiet. No one moved, no one spoke, but Walter could feel the weight of their gaze. They were watching him. "This place is my legacy," he said, his voice firming up. "And I won't let it be built on discrimination. Not anymore." The next few days were a blur. Walter worked tirelessly, meeting with consultants, revising menus, and organizing diversity training for his staff. It was exhausting, and he felt every minute of it. But the more he worked, the more he realized something. This wasn't just about saving Garrison Steakhouse. It was about saving himself. When Darren Cole came back the following week, Walter was ready. Darren walked through the door, the bell chiming softly as it had the first night they met. He didn't look surprised when he saw the changes. He didn't need to. Walter had already sent word to him that the restaurant was undergoing a complete overhaul. Walter greeted him at the door with a genuine smile this time. He wasn't sure what Darren had expected, but it wasn't this. "Mr. Cole," Walter said, extending his hand. "I hope you'll give me the chance to show you the changes we've made." Darren glanced at him for a long moment, as though weighing his options. Then he shook Walter's hand. "I'm willing to see if you mean it," Darren said, his voice measured, almost casual. Walter led him to the same table near the back, but this time it wasn't a symbol of exclusion. It was a place of redemption. They sat, and for a moment, neither spoke. Darren surveyed the room, noting the new energy that seemed to fill the space. He had to admit it wasn't what he expected. Walter broke the silence. "I won't pretend I can undo the past. What I did to you, to others, I can't fix with words. But I can try to do better." Darren nodded slowly. "Actions speak louder than words, Walter." And for the first time since he'd walked into the restaurant, Walter believed it. As their meal arrived, steaks, wine, and a host of sides, it wasn't just about food. It was about something far deeper. The power of second chances, of redemption, of learning from your mistakes and moving forward. Darren set down his fork and looked Walter square in the eye. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" Walter met his gaze. "Yes, but I think we're headed in the right direction."